It's 6:43. I'm calling the Laws and Rules Committee to order. At this time, I will allow 15 minutes for public speaking about any issue that's on the agenda. If anybody, you were first. Sure.
Also okay? Okay.
Okay, so yeah, as I said before, my name is Stephanie Linsig. I live in Ward 4. And yeah, in just the last 3 months, I have been privy to multiple incidences of police misconduct. And as you know, Rise Up Kingston has been working on a comprehensive piece of legislation to make much needed amendments to the police commission. They're common sense amendments. We've had this legislation looked at by the NYCLU, and they have given it their stamp of approval. We've had multiple conversations with them, and the legislation has been iterated multiple times to come to where it is today. I have copies of the legislation for all of you. I know it's on the agenda, but you know, when you come job interview, you come prepared. I also have a copy of our timeline just to show that the work that we've been doing for the past 2 years, starting in March of 2018, and we're coming up on March 2020, and our goal is to have this passed by then. So I ask you today to pass it through Laws and Rules onto the Common Council. I also want to just turn to the crowd, and anyone here who's supporting police accountability today, if you just wouldn't mind raising your hand, just so you can see a visual of the folks that we have here. So thank you. And my co-conspirator, Beetle, would also like to say something. Thank you.
Hi, Beetle Bailey of Kingston. So I imagine that you, the alder folk, and various council people get sick of hearing the voices of Kingston rising up and demanding things. Well, there's really only one way to make sure that you stop hearing demands and complaints from the people of Kingston, and that's to give us the things that we need. We need police accountability. Rise Up Kingston, members of Kingston's community, the NYCLU, have been working hard to have legislation be passed for the past 2 years, and you guys have had that legislation for months. And as the public often has heard from law enforcement, if one hasn't done wrong, one has nothing to worry about. Accountability is only a boogeyman if someone has done something for which there needs to be an accounting. So law enforcement officers have to be held not only to the same standards of accountability as civilians, but to a higher standard still. Their calling and privileges as officers of the law demands that. So before more people are harmed, more lives are upset or damaged or even taken, before more injustices occur to weigh on the soul of this community, please pass this legislation on. Accountability for all is paramount in a just society. And I'm sure you guys already know that. And not just from Kingston civilians, but from Kingston police, from Kingston everyone. Responsibility, accountability, and safety for all of us. Real people, real Kingstonians. Let's, build a Kingston that isn't united by the whim of poorly considered and established, often biased rules, but by jointly agreed upon law and order and real justice. So police accountability now. Thank you.
Hi again. Do I need to say my name again? Okay. I know that there is an issue coming up before the committee about some pretty major changes to the way streetlights are managed in the city, and I'm just hoping that there can be some more public input before that is passed through committee. it seems like the kind of issue that there should be a public hearing and people should communicate with their alder people and have a clearer sense of what's being changed and why. So that was all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Barbara Scott, 66 Spruce Street, Kingston. I also want to second that request that there be more input from the public about the street lighting policy that's on the agenda. Maybe a year ago, a group of us met with Climate Smart Kingston and some other folks in City Hall to discuss the lighting, especially in the Rondout area. And there's quite a bit of concern and interest in how the lighting proceeds from here on in. And given the complications of the issues and the fact that it's an ever-evolving update on what is best practice in terms of street lighting and in terms of the dark skies regulations. Dark skies actually has a whole model law policy around some of the particulars, and when I read the policy that's being put forward, there's a lot of generalities in this that leave quite a bit up to discretion rather than being clearly defined as this is how and this is why and this is what's required. And I think the clearer we make the policy and take the time to make it clear, the better off the policy will be, better off the city will be for any future, implementation of it. Thanks.
Hi, Tanya, Garment 102 Wirt Street. I was also following the LED street light replacement about a year ago. I was surprised to see when this came up, this street lighting policies and procedures. Street lighting is all about safety and the public realm. We have a lot of issues with the way that street lights are placed in the city of Kingston that really does need improvement. This needs to be a discussion of what are our goals that has never been had. We at this point don't have well-lit crosswalks. There are many issues that are not addressed in this document, and some issues that are just weird. Why is the director of what is Ms. Noble's role? It's not a sustainability issue. The LED light conversion was, but this is about where we put our street lights, how tall they are. This is not about an LED conversion at this point. This is all about engineering and Department of Public Works and safety. It would be crazy if we would just, this is just something that popped up out of nowhere. We have no idea how this evolved. And we're looking at it now and as I understand that there's a possibility, I asked the chair what's going forward and asked about, are we voting on this tonight? Is this for this month? And I hear that there's a possibility that you may not even vote on it. That would be crazy. This is a policy. How is it different than traffic control devices in the city of Kingston? We have boards and commissions, and I was really disappointed when I heard in response to the seeker process for trees, the Corporation Council say our boards and commissions don't review what the city of Kingston does because that's like the city reviewing the city. No, it's not. Our boards and commissions is not the city. That's one of our citizen representation. Boards and commissions are mostly made up of citizens, and they're to review things that are really about what's going to affect all of us. So please make sure that you represent us in this. We really need a policy that's well thought out for our public realm and our safety. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Beth Capps, and I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I work and I shop and I volunteer for Rise Up Kingston in Kingston. I actually just got a job here because I'm here so much, so my husband's like, just get a job in Kingston. But I volunteered for way over a year pretty much when they first started, and I started door knocking for them about the police accountability platform about 6 months ago. I do not like doing that. I dread every time, I promise to do it, and I drive here and I'm like, maybe it'll snow, whatever, but I do it. And what strikes me every time is that when people actually answer the door when they're home, 90% of the people, if not more, sign the petition. If you asked me a year ago how many people would sign that petition if you're presenting something, I'd say 10, 30%. 30% would be a nice amount. 90% of the people sign the petition. We've had a retired police officer sign the petition, and we're not at their house for a long time. So I just had to say that because I think that's a strong thing that the people in your community want accountability. You all have procedures and policies to accept this position. I just received a new job. I know what the policy and the procedures are. We give it to the new associates. How does a police commission dealing with such important situations doesn't have such a structured policy and procedures that are transparent? That's all we're asking for. I don't think that's much. So, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, seeing no more speakers, we're going to start with the first item on the agenda. And since the first item on the agenda was the open space plan, but I spoke to Mrs. Noble, and asked her if we could move the police accountability to the top of the agenda, just because there's so many people here that are here to listen to that discussion. So, on the question.
So I'm going to ask that the police accountability legislation be referred to the Special Policing Committee so that we can further look into it and try to implement some of these measures that the group is asking for. And I happen to be chair of that Special Police Committee.
Okay, so that's a motion?
That is a motion.
Okay. Second. Okay, I just want to say for the record that a group of us have met with Rise Up Kingston for a very long time about this, and I'm also on that committee, I'm looking forward to working on it and getting something done. Okay, so what is the motion to refer?
To refer the Rise Up legislation that has been put forth to the Special Police Committee.
Anybody else has anything to add on the question before I call for the vote? Okay. Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye, sorry. Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Do you want to, before we move on to the next item, do you want to speak a little bit? I know a lot of people here are interested in what that means.
Sure.
And what the scope and the purpose of the subcommittee is.
So the Special Policing Committee was developed and instituted by Madam Alderwoman at Large, just to, as another vehicle or another channel to look into this legislation. Personally, for the record, I believe that a lot of the legislation that has been put forth are a lot of common sense measures. And so we look forward to looking into it and seeing what we can implement. Those of you that were here on the inaugural day when the mayor spoke, he actually talked about 2 initiatives that he wanted, that he was backing and that he wanted to get behind. Those being training for the police commission, as well as instituting a 9-member advisory board, representative from each ward, which makes sense. You know, again, some of these are common sense measures. And so this panel, which is made up of myself as chair, Jeffrey and Don Tallerman, and Rennie. Okay, so the 3 of us will really, dig into this legislation and see what we can implement and see what we cannot implement. And we look forward to meeting with Rise Up. We look forward to talking to other public entities and public groups. We're here to help. That's what our job is, and that's what we're going to do. We want to make the Kingston more safe, and we want our residents to be safe. And so that's what we'll be doing in the coming weeks. And you all know how to get in touch with us. You may submit anything that you want to submit, and it's going to be a public process.
Can I ask about the process? So once it goes to the special committee, does it then have to come back to laws and rules to be passed and then on the council?
I think someone wants to answer that question. I think it would,
Clarification?
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, so it's
Yeah.
going to go to the special committee, who's comprised of folks who are on this committee also, decided upon there, and then brought back to laws and rules, and then to common council.
Yes.
Timeline for that?
Well, I'll be calling meetings in the near future for us to get together and start looking at this legislation and seeing what we can actually do right now in the immediate future. So all meetings will be public and you'll know about them.
And just to add to that, there are things that the mayor has already come on board with that don't need legislation, and we can start working on those as soon as he gets them on our table. For example, this 9-member panel, which will, as he explained it to me, receive any complaints, have access to all the evidence, and then make a recommendation to the committee, to the commission. This is something that as soon as that's drafted, we can start working on, as well as training for the commissioners. That's something that not only the mayor has expressed that he's in favor of, but we've spoken to several police commissioners, and they welcome the opportunity to have that training.
Sorry, Jeffrey, could you repeat that?
Training for the police commissioners. We've spoken to several of the commissioners and the mayor, and everybody is on board with having that training. So that's something that we can start researching and make happen.
Is that going to be public as well?
Yes, this is all going to be discussed through the subcommittee. Yeah. And well, as soon as this meeting is over, we'll get together and decide when our first meeting is going to be, and then announce it to the public.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda.
Let them know that unless they really want to see
Oh.
the rest of the meeting, that they can feel free to go. We're not talking about that anymore.
Yes, you don't have to sit through the whole meeting if you just came through. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we have the open space plan, and Julie Noble is here to present about it.
So thank you for having me. At this point, where we are with the open space plan is we are looking for the council to declare yourselves lead agency. That's the next step in the seeker process. So what I'm requesting is that you forward to the full council.
Just because there's new members on this committee, can you just kind of explain where we already did, since we did stuff last year that, you know, the...
Sure. So for the past 8 or so years, the Parks and Recreation Department and the Conservation Advisory Council have been working on, with funding from the Department of Environmental Conservation, a natural resources inventory, which was completed last year by a consultant. And that mapped out all of our resources within the city without using any subjectivities. All objectively, this is what we have. Everything from our wetlands to our soils, to our forests, to our parks, to our cultural areas, historic areas, and more. That data was put into a Geographic Information Systems, GIS system. It's all available to the staff, and it's all available to all the PDFs of all the maps, and all the data is available online right now on the city's website. Subsequent to that, we had funding, again through the Department of Environmental Conservation, to take this natural resources inventory, create prioritization, and create an open space plan using that information. So what was done was the layers of the natural resources inventory were taken and overlapped to create a composite map that created hotspots within the city of Kingston. Hotspots being areas that had multiple natural resources and were most valuable for conservation. That's all outlined in the open space plan. Also, a vision map was created, which created visions for different portions, different components of conservation around the city. So things like restoring stream corridors, opening up public access, planting more trees, protecting space along the waterfront, adding a new neighborhood park, protecting farmland, and the goals were set out for 10 years. There were no stipulations in the open space plan that say how to execute this. This is not an implementation plan. It is a set of goals for the city. The next step, so this open space plan is complete. From the consultant's perspective, they are done. The city can take this and say, thank you. Or we can take this and say, we're going to adopt it, or as a city plan. Or we can take this and say, we're going to adopt it as an element of the comprehensive plan. That is the action that myself and the Conservation Advisory Council are recommending. In order to do that, it needs to go through the State Environmental Quality Review Act process. And that has begun already. So, at the end of 2019, the council, we submitted to interested parties and involved agencies and interested agencies. We were required to go out to these agencies and say, you have an opportunity to be lead agency. All of the interested and involved agencies declined being the lead agency. So my understanding is that the next step has to be that you formalize that you are the lead agency. I can't speak for any other agency. I can presume that they think that the city that is operating, that we are the municipality ourselves, and we would be the most logical to be the lead agency.
Did we actually get any comments back from the interested agencies, or was it just by default that they're okay with it? Yeah.
And I have a question on your, you raised some questions on your email to Sue and Elisa, and I don't see their response. Was it, did they agree with what you were asking? That
Can you remind me what the questions were?
Communication back in October.
Is it possible that the space plan is already covered by the city's generic environmental impact statement? That was one, that's the
Yes, I recall that question.
It was back in October.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I didn't know then, and I don't know now.
Oh, okay.
So is that's going to change something here? I'll presume. Okay, so.
No, I was just wondering because it was part of the, as part of the packet, so I was just wondering what the response was.
I don't have a response.
Okay,
I wasn't given a response, I guess is the answer.
okay.
However, my recollection is that the council decided to advance this process, which is why we went out to the community to say, who else wants to be lead agency? That began the secret process.
Right.
So my understanding is that we will
We're in the
proceed
secret process,
with the secret process.
Okay, all right.
That being said, my understanding again is that you need to declare yourselves lead agency officially.
Okay. So, hold on, so what is the, oh, somebody needs to make the motion first. So there's the resolution for the City of Kingston Common Council to declare itself lead agency on the open space plan. Do I have a motion?
A motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Oh, I didn't vote aye. Too many things to do.
Glad you're talking to yourself.
So this is Parks and Recreation Department, right? Oh, sorry. On the open. Sorry, I write slow. Patrick. Second.
Really, what would be the next steps to this?
My understanding of the next step is that technically the Common Council, but more likely with city help, would prepare the environmental assessment form that fills out all the documentation about what impact this open space plan will have. And from there, the proposed plan and the environmental assessment form would be circulated to the involved agencies and the abutting municipalities and Ulster County Planning Board for their review. And then you would hold a public hearing on the proposed open space plan, and then you would make a declaration of a negative or a positive declaration, and then it would be adopted or not adopted.
Thank you.
You.
That's it. So the next issue, communication was submitted by Ed Norman for the street light policy, but you said you would like to stay on this?
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Okay, so DPW is looking to create a streetlight policy. We don't have one at this time. We need something looking forward to be able to, get it done when we need to. Been tasked. We have been tasked, my department, along with Julie and the engineering department, the sustainability coordinator, to come up with a policy to take care of this. So Julie is the project manager, pretty much authored this with the help of input from engineering and DPW. she should speak to this instead of me. Thank you.
Okay, so just to bring everyone up to speed on where the LED retrofit project is and what this policy is and what it is not. So just a quick background on how we got here and where we are. The city several years ago purchased all of our streetlights from Central Hudson, which began the process of retrofitting, of allowing us to retrofit our lights to LED. Over the past 2 to 3 years, in small batches, not as part of any large project, the city has been retrofitting lights around the city, bringing on a certified linesman to do that project. We do not have a person on staff that is qualified to be a linesman, which is what is required in order to change the bulk of our streetlights. Now we have 2 major kinds, Cobra heads, which are what you see around down most of the roads, and then we have decoratives, which are like the shorter ones that you see downtown and uptown. We can work on decoratives, we cannot work on Cobra heads, which means that each time that needs to be done, we need to hire or go out to bid for a certified journeyman linesman, they're called. We've done that about 5 or 6 times now, bringing on VEITH to install LED lighting as lights were out around town. In the last few years, we worked with the Mid-Hudson Streetlight Consortium and got into an aggregate program after the governor established his goals for retrofitting LED lights around the state. The New York Power Authority, NYPA, created a program that we entered into. We are in a contract with NYPA for several $1 million, of which you approved bonding for several years ago. NYPA subcontracted to Wendell. Wendell is an engineering firm and design firm that is the project manager on the project. We are in an aggregate, which means there are other communities that will be doing the same thing as us, and also in doing so, we're able to make a large amount of purchases at a cheaper price for the materials themselves and for the labor. Wendell subcontracted on the state level through their procurement process and after reviewing all the bids, chose D and M, which is the construction company that is doing our retrofits. They began this process, they mobilized a week or so ago, and they began installation of 2,400 lights last week. This will take approximately 10 weeks to complete. In the last year or so, we've realized in this process that there was not a consistent policy or decision-making process on how and when and where and who to change lighting. And in this process, we made the decision that in order to entertain and understand and make decisions objectively, a policy needed to be created. We understood that prior to the design that was done and the audit that was done as part of this LED process, that decisions had been made, like other decisions around the city, decisions had been made with putting in lighting or otherwise, or changing lighting or modifying it on a location by location basis. And when our audit was completed by Wendell, what they provided us, our audit being, this is what your existing streetlight layout looks like. You know, this is what you have, this is the wattages, this is the Kelvin, how bright it is, all these different things. It looked like a map of Skittles. So we're talking, you can go all different places around the city and there will be all different types of lighting. The purpose of this LED lighting project, which I'd mentioned I'm the project manager for, was first and foremost for energy efficiency and also to create a uniform lighting system around the city. In doing so, we decided to go with 3,500 Kelvin, which is how bright the lights are around the city. And we consolidated our inventory so that there are not wattages of all over the map, so that once this project moves forward, we'll have only a few different wattages of lights that we can easily continue to change. That being said, we still do not have a journeyman on our payroll. So in this process, we also realized that through multiple departments, whether it's through engineering or parks or the mayor's office or the clerk's office or primarily DPW, and also very frequently through aldermen, we would be receiving questions, comments, complaints of community members saying, my light is out, my light is bent, my light is bright, my light is whatever, fill in the blank. I want a new light, I want to get rid of this light. And realized that there were many reasons why decisions were being made all over the map, and we wanted to make that uniform and objective. Otherwise, we didn't think that there was going to be a fair way to proceed, such that any new decision made after this design process would need to comply with the design that we took the time to create. And so, as an operational policy of the Department of Public Works with engineering and with myself as the project manager of the current project and the person within the city having the most knowledge of the current LED system, as Ed mentioned, we developed an internal executive branch policy, which was, this is how we think we should make decisions about lighting. So again, we get input from and questions and everything from all different angles. So we consolidated that process. You will, just like you come to fill out a form to get a sidewalk permit or something else in the DPW, you'll fill out your streetlight request form. I want to add one, I want to remove one. But just like we know that it could be one loud person that just wants something changed and the next day they might want something different, we also included that they would need to get a petition from their neighbors. Because the street light, first and foremost, of course, we all know this is about safety, but we also know that with the new street light system that is being installed as we speak, the lights, when they are properly installed, are not meant to be lighting up your front porch or even your front yard. They are directional so that they should be lighting the street. And so understanding that, we also know that one person who has a light in front of their home or wants one or doesn't want one, it's not about just that person, it's about the whole entire neighborhood, and it also needs to fit into the design. So the petition process ensures that all of the neighbors within a reasonable area agree to whatever the change is and sign on that they support the petition or they do not. In this process, the city would work directly with whoever the requester is, whether the requester is one of you as the Common Council, someone down the street, the engineering department, internal, external, no matter who, so that we all go through the same process and that it is consistent. Whether or not I'm here in the future, whether or not Mr. Norman is here in the future, whether or not Mr. Schulteis is here in the future. It's still an objective policy. And this policy would be very clear and explicit. We heard your response. Here's your petition form. Here's a map of your location. You can go door to door and get your petition signed and bring it back. We will then convene to review this on a quarterly basis. So it is not someone's full-time job to be managing streetlights. It is certainly not my full-time job. It's not my part-time job. And Ed does not have someone who does streetlights technically in his department. So in order to share the workload and also be reasonable about everyone's time, we would review these every 3 months. So we would gather up, of course, during that process, we would be making sure that everyone has the forms they need, goes out with their petition, has the map that they need to go and explain to their neighbors what they're requesting. Bring that back, we sit down, we look at our design, we contemplate whether this fits in with the design or not, whether it's a removal or an addition. Does it fit in with the design? Did they get a petition? If it is yes, then we reply back to the person, yes, we have approved of your request. And then we have at one time, every 3 months, we then have to go out to bid to bring on a journeyman to then do all these in one lump. This would be the advantage as opposed to doing a rolling process where we would then get one request and have to bring on a linesman and then bring on someone else again and again and again. This would be 4 times a year we would have our streetlights retrofitted. Separate from, and that was if they were approved. If they were denied, then there would be consistent reasoning why it would be denied. Either it doesn't, and you can see this on the last page, it doesn't conform with our streetlight specifications, it has adverse impacts, all these different things. It's also easier for budgeting in this way so that the department knows over the course of the year, there's going to be 4 different times when they need to be budgeting for bringing on a linesman and also making modifications. There's a separate section in here that talks about outages, and outages would be addressed certainly if there was something that needed to be addressed absolutely immediately for public safety, we would do that, but this is actually bringing everything together so that we know everything in one place. This consolidates the information sharing, consolidates communication, it objectifies the process, and it brings politics out of it. And that's why we're doing it. It is an internal policy, in my opinion, and I'm bringing it to you, in my opinion, as an information, not for an approval. Of course, that is ultimately your decision. And I would be happy to answer any questions about street lighting, about the policy, about anything that's going on with LEDs, but that's how we got here.
Just want to say thank you. First of all, I had some people already in my ward that have been complaining to me about streetlights, and they've been replaced in the last couple of days, so they're very, very grateful.
Great. I will say, just to give you a quick update on D&M's process, they've done more than 400 already. We had a meeting with them. They only have 2,400 to do. They are going generally around by ward, so they have effectively nearly completed, if not completed, wards 4 and 5, and they'll be moving to 1, 2, and 3 next. So you'll see them around town moving very fast. They're doing at least 50 a day. There are 2 crews, and we certainly expect the process to be done pretty rapidly. Although we've been waiting a long time for this, it's actually happening pretty rapidly.
So I have a question then.
Yeah.
So these are new lights. They had been waiting 8 or 9 months and were really frustrated. So how long do we expect these lights to last before they burn out?
Yep, so there is a 10-year warranty on the lights. We have a 1-year warranty on the labor itself, so if within 1 year we see anything that we need to change, D&M will come back and make that change. The lights themselves have a 10-year warranty.
Okay, so, but then it would still have to go through the 3 months, like the new process then?
Yes.
To be replaced?
To be replaced, yes.
I mean,
This is if you submit your application on day 1 of the 3-month process, the most time you would have to wait would be 3 months. And I will just say, per our track record so far, that is an incredibly short period of time.
That's not a short time if you have a lot of crime in your neighborhood.
Understood?
So,
yeah, it's just
I mean, I like the policy, and thank you so much for getting to Ward 4 and putting the lights on. You all know what has been happening in Ward 4, and the lights, it is a public safety matter. So thank you for that. I like the policy. However, I do not like that should a light burn out, they would have to wait 3 months to get it replaced. I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, if right now, if there's an issue, the alderman would take care of it, and you taking politics out of it, which is essentially taking the council out of it, is not going to help us advocate for our constituents. And that is one of my bigger issues with the policy and also just the process of this. I don't quite understand, because this was sent as a communication to me as president with a resolution, and then all of a sudden this is a courtesy, and now you're saying this is just your opinion that this is a courtesy and that we can vote on this. I have been advocating for streetlight policy for probably close to a year, since last April. So I'm definitely supporting something along these lines. I just think that as the council, as a deliberative body who represents the people, that in order to get public input, that the council should have some feedback and should be part of this conversation about this policy, and not just serve as, hey guys, this is what we did just to be nice to you. That if you really want our feedback, then you would be asking for that, not just saying that this is, a favor to us.
Okay. You brought up...
Any operational decision that is carried out by the department that our form of government falls under the authority of the executive who is the mayor. The mayor certainly can. The mayor, I'm talking to my clients, not to the public. The mayor has the authority to implement this policy with or without approval from the council. The mayor has brought the council to advise the council, recognizing that the council members are the individuals who are going to get the phone calls from the community and wants the council to be informed about it. The mayor certainly is interested in from the council after this presentation, and if there are concerns or comments that you wish to forward to him, he will take those and he will speak to his departments and to the individuals who are charged with implementing this operational policy. This isn't a legislative function of this body, and that is very clear under our form.
I don't know if anybody else has this, has a resolution on it that says resolution to adopt the streetlight policy. So now you're saying
that was sent in error. It was an attempt to put it on the agenda to inform you with regard to this policy that has been developed. And when the communication was sent, the resolution went along with it. There is no need for any resolution from this body at this point. Julie is here to update the council or this committee with regard to the work that has been undertaken over the course of the last, how long?
Months or years.
If there are comments or questions.
Well, the streetlight policy hasn't been years,
Streetlight policy has been more than 6 months.
not years.
Right, so, I'm sorry, just clear something up for me. So, our constituents will call us and tell us about a streetlight that might be out or something that they want changed. We will then submit it to the appropriate department, and then they will make the decision as to whether it gets implemented or not? So we're partly a part of it, but really not. Is that what you're telling me?
They're communicating their concerns through you, and you are forwarding them to the appropriate department to be addressed pursuant to the operational policy that has been developed.
So the person themselves can fill this out, or you could fill it out?
But we still can't advocate. We just fill out
Right, so-
a generalized form that doesn't have any kind of human touch to this. I mean, so say Rita has a light out in her ward that she's worried about, that on that street, that she should be able to say, no, this really needs attention immediately. And if it's January 2nd, then you're going to say, well, we're too busy. This is not even a part-time job for us, so we have to wait until April 1st. Doesn't give us a chance to really advocate for our constituents.
Sure, I'd like to address some of the things that you're bringing up. So one is, it's certainly within the council's ability, if you feel as though it is fiscally responsible to be bringing on a journeyman every time we need to change a light, then that's certainly within your authority to do so. And if you want us to do it more frequently, that would mean that we just need to go out to hire a journeyman every time we need to do it.
The only thing I would say to that, Julie, is that I think that public safety might be a little bit more important than how much money we're going to spend to make someone safe.
Okay. And again, that can be within your authority to make those budget changes. I also want to say that you absolutely would have the ability to advocate for one of your residents, as you could speak with the neighbors that would or would not sign the petition. I think that what you're saying calls directly to why we want to make something objective, so that it's not somebody who is bringing on the most complaints or the loudest complaints that gets their light done when it's outside of the realm of what the process is and the design is. And so this objective process lets us review each one on the same plane.
It seems to me, though, that we could, if there is an emergency, if a light goes out, that we could certainly call for an emergency response, right?
We could, and we have, and we did that in our most recent installation where we brought VEETH on and installed to 10 around town.
Great. So if a light at a particular intersection before the 10 years is up went out and an alderman called, the alderman wouldn't have to go through the petition process, right? We'd be able to say, hey, there's an emergency here, and theoretically the city could call and take care of that, even if there were not other issues that had to be addressed by this repairer.
Yes, and I do want to make clear that there's a difference in this procedure and policy whatever we want to call it, between an outage and an addition or a removal of a light. So the petition process is not a petition as to whether we want to replace a light that is out. If there is a light that is out, you can call me and say, hey, Julie, there's a light out at 101 Wilson Avenue, and we'll put it on the list. And the next time that we bring on, have the group of lights that, just like we do now, and we bring on the lineman, we would get that installed. No other questions, nothing else. You can text me and say, this light is out. If this is only the petition, and the whole process only has to happen if somebody wants to remove a light or add a light.
So if a light is out, then we call you and tell you about the light. You would want to wait until maybe there's a bulk of lighting out, or is that what you're saying?
Yes, which is what we've been doing and have done the last 6 times over the last 2 or 3 years. So we've waited. In the first couple of rounds, we waited till there was 50. I can't imagine we're going to do that now because there aren't going to be that many that are out. Every light that we have is getting replaced. And so in theory, for the next 10 years, we wouldn't even have to have this conversation. But when we have a grouping of lights, then that's when we would bring in someone to change them. We've also entertained the idea of training one of our staff to bring them to the qualifications that we would need, so this could be done immediately. Again, that is something you can advocate for. You can change the budget to have that in there. That person does not currently exist, and it is not a very simple certification. It takes several months where they have to go away somewhere to be certified, but if that's a conversation that the council wants to have to advocate for, that's an option that you have as well.
When you came up with the task street team, did you ever consider having somebody from the Complete Streets Advisory Council so that you get a citizen, a public member on that?
No, but that's a good recommendation.
I mean, these are the things that, like I said, I don't know exactly what this is supposed to mean with this just being a courtesy information session for us, but I think I'm speaking for at least myself and Steve Shabbat, who couldn't stay, but he feels the same way, that we want to, even if we're not voting on this, we want to be able to give feedback, and this not to be just you telling us this affects the public. We should have the right to really dig into this a little bit and give you feedback, even if it's then your department that decides to do this, if it's just an interdepartment thing, or if it's the mayor deciding to do it. If you're coming to us as a courtesy, then I hope you're going to extend that courtesy and give us the time to look at this and actually give you feedback and for you to listen, and then take what you want from it. So that's what I'm hoping, if this is the process that we need to do.
Also, the public was asking tonight to have more input and have maybe possibly a hearing on it.
I'm going to defer to council on this, as in my opinion, this is an operational procedure.
There's absolutely no authority or basis to have a public hearing with regard to an operational decision of the executive branch. In terms of advocating for the constituents, the same way any one of you will at my office is an issue with regard to building safety or parking or anything that needs to be addressed. You would call Julie's office or Ed's office, and the process would run its course. Yes.
Sorry.
This directly affects my constituents. We're asking them actually to perform tasks. I'm not saying you are. I'm saying this policy is actually perform tests to get a light removed or to get a light placed in. Right? It's not just they're going to call and ask requests. It's not just a request. Actually, ask or get this done. I think that makes it a little different.
And just piggybacking on that, I mean, if you're working 2-3 jobs, you may not be able to go around and collect petition signatures, or if you're not able-bodied and you can't walk around. I mean, you could call a neighbor and ask for him to say this. These are things that we should be thinking about, and as advocacy for the public, that we should be the ones that bring some of this up.
Oh,
But
And I wasn't done.
Are you saying in
I
the
wasn't
policy
done.
here that the alderperson could be the person who walks the petition around, which is what we should be doing anyway if somebody asks for something to be changed that affects 20, 30, 40 neighbors, right? So, I mean, there is an element of work there that we might not have done before because, in a sense, we have to create an administrative record of talking to different people.
But
it wouldn't have to- it wouldn't have to be-
I mean, that could work if somebody's wants a street light and they go to DPW and they get this form, I mean, it would be nice if there was reassurance that the alderman would then be roped into this, but, and that's what we did with the traffic signage or control engineering study, is we still made sure that, and I understand that that's different because that's legislative, but this is still has to do with the public and, what services that we provide to them, and, some kind of, this is so general that it can be interpreted that way, but then it can also be interpreted not that way.
Well, we could also have on the form itself, there could be, if it's in a place where a resident would pick it up, either the form says you must, alert your alderperson, or whenever somebody comes to pick one up, they could register that they've picked it up with DPW, and DPW might enter it into the 311 system or some other way of alerting us.
Right, it's not in this policy, so it doesn't make me very confident that this policy...
Well, wait, but what I hear Julie saying is we can write her and otherwise communicate things we'd like to see changed. Am I right about that?
Provide input on anything you'd like to provide input on.
That doesn't mean, Pat, I'm going to
Can
let
I
you
get back?
finish.
Thank you
Pat,
very much.
finish. Yeah.
So, since this directly affects people, right? It's not just a request. I would imagine that they'd want their representatives to be a part of this. No doubt. I know I would want my alderman to be a part of something if I had to walk 150 feet and go knock on my neighbor's door who I don't even know, or maybe I do know them and I don't want to knock on their door. So I think it's beyond. I think that brings us into it. I think that fact right there brings us into it. So I don't know.
Yeah,
This might be something we should vote on, just for that reason.
I have to agree. I understand personal responsibility and also public policy. People should be responsible at some point, but this is why they elect us, to represent them and to advocate them. I can tell you, even if there is a form where a person can come in and pick up at City Hall, but they know that their alderman, all they got to do is pick up the phone and call their alderperson, and that person is going to do it for them, 9 times out of 10, that's what's going to happen. And so, I can't speak for other wards, but I know that the constituents in my ward, they rely on me, and maybe to a fault, but they do. If there's any issue, I'm getting a phone call, I can say, you can go right down to City Hall. You're my representative. You're my advocate. I elected you. What did I elect you for? And so this is what I see coming up with this. And for us not to be involved in this process, or for us to just maybe shoot an email to you and letting you know this is what's happening, but the ultimate decision still lies in your hands. That's what I'm hearing. I think it's going to be a problem.
The decision doesn't lie in just my hands.
And the operational department's hands. I'll say that. You just said that it's really an operational matter, right? So, whether we submit something to you or not, it still is an operational matter that's going to, you have the timeline, the 3 months for whatever process, and then a bulk of lights would have to be out just to even get anyone to go out and fix them. That still is the policy, right? Whether we say something or not. And I see that to be a problem.
I'm concerned that by putting in like that resident